guys, it's video number 2. Thanks for tuning in. This is a real favorite of mine because we're gonna explore one of my favorite places, a place that I've gotten to spend a lot of time in the culture. I have it has a dear place, the culture has a dear place to my heart. When I see the people and I feel the culture and I hear the music, me excited because it takes me to a time where I was visiting this place all the time, and if you know me, you already know where I'm gonna say it's Tokyo, Japan. So let's explore. Okay, so I personally love Japan. I've spent a lot of time there. I just love the culture. I love when I was there, I always felt safe. There was never a time where I was thinking something was sketchy, or I literally would go on runs at 4 o'clock in the morning because the time difference, I would be wide awake. So I would run the streets of Tachikawa all the time and just kind of really just be grateful for the moment. And you just see buildings, tall buildings, everywhere, colors all through the night. It's so busy, you hear so many sounds in certain areas, and I just always felt safe. So that's something I can't say about all places, but one thing I really appreciate about Japan, I could do literally, I could go for a walk, go for some ice cream, ramen noodles at 12 a.m., 2 a.m. It didn't matter. The streets were always live, colorful, and just so much to see. And so yeah, I just love it for it just being safe. That's a big deal when you go to places that aren't safe, or somewhere like Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan I've been to, and I just felt like I didn't want to be there. But Japan is total opposite of that. And surprisingly, me being darker in complexion, I was skeptical, I was curious, I should say, if people were gonna look at me all the time or stare at me or look at my big hair when I wear it out. But surprisingly, I was able to blend in, more so because the people of Japan, the locals, were so just focused on what they were doing. Very busy days, I can imagine. So they were just either on their phones or just gathering their children as they walk through the stations of the train, or they were just very busy and focused. So they didn't really pay attention to me all the time, but if I was doing something that I wasn't supposed to be doing or something that wasn't a social norm, I definitely would know, because that's when people would look at me what are you doing? For example, one time I love to eat on the go. I'm always eating, I'm always moving. However, I was eating ice cream outside. I was walking to my hotel eating an ice cream bar. It sounds like me because I love ice cream. And everyone was just looking at me, and I knew immediately that it was not polite to be outside walking and eating at the same time in public, So I learned that quickly, but those are the only times where I felt or I noticed that I stood out. Other times I blended right in, which I really appreciated. One of my favorite things to do, my coworker Jana and I, we would go out to stores, and we would just play with the gadgets and want to figure out how they worked. And so there's so many things, makeup products that you never even thought of. They have things for everything, so many mechanics or maintenance things that you can use for your nose, your mouth, things that just make it so convenient. Face masks, I love. One unique thing that I thought was so great, and I don't understand why Seattle doesn't have it, because it rains all the time in Seattle. But then again, people in Seattle don't really use umbrellas. I mean, compared to Japan, when you go to Japan, it's 95% of everyone has an umbrella. When it's raining in Seattle, it's 40% of people. And some of them don't even have their hood on, which I'm it's raining, it's wet. Anywho, but when you walk in Japan, one thing, if you've been, you already seen these, but they have these clear plastic wraps for your umbrellas. So you slide them, and it's a mechanical thing, and you I'll try to pull one up here, but you put, as you're going into stores, you don't want to get the floor wet, so how convenient is it for you to walk in and it kind of grasp over your umbrella, and it's disposable, so you can throw it away. So just a clear plastic wrap to cover your umbrella, so it grabs the drippings of rain while you're in the store. Another aspect to Japan that I really enjoy is the public transportation. Like when you are adventurous like myself and you want to get places and you don't have a car, obviously, and you definitely don't want to drive on the opposite side of the road because, I don't know, for me, I don't have enough practice with that. Public transportation, convenient, fast, quick, is very nice to have. So Japan, I'm so thankful I was going to a city where I could just hop on a train and be there within, minutes, hours. So yeah, public transportation is very easy to do. Of course, do research before you go. Don't go blindsided. Like, have an idea of the words that you need to look for and the kind of areas that you're reaching, because that'll make it a lot more easier when you're weaving through the train stations. They have maps everywhere, and the maps are color coordinated. Most of them are in Japanese, but they have the main lines. Like if you're looking for like a Truro line or Asakusa line, like they'll have colors associated and the names, so at least you know what you're looking for before you go. And if I can do it, you can do it. So I just recommend doing research before you go. Really grateful for, like I mentioned before, I was going there all the time, so I got to like really watch and observe people, and not being judgmental, but kind of just trying to understand their perspective and kind of like not being so biased of my own social norms, and kind of really practice cultural relativism and like really place myself in their shoes. So I'm really thankful for that opportunity and kind of that wisdom of figuring that out, because it really changed my perspective. Honestly, like before I started traveling to Japan, I used to always kind of joke around and say, man, I'm not trying to get old. Like my perspective of age changed, and I always looked at old as being like fragile and slow and less energetic. However, when I went to Japan, it was amazing to see so many elders just like active in the community, either like sweeping the streets, gardening, working, grocery shopping, riding bikes. Like they were so active and so young and looked so beautiful, men and women, and I was just like really amazed at that, and it changed my perspective of age, and it made me thrive for like really treating my body well now and just creating longevity so that when I do get older, it can be a beautiful like thing, because there are people today that, like I said, like grandmas are riding bikes in Japan in like 80-degree weather and it's super hot. So I just admire that, and that's something that really changed my perspective and something that I learned, and it's just really cool to see. And did you know, fun fact, that so Okinawans, which are people who live in Okinawa, which is less than 500 miles from Japan, are proven to have the longest longevity of life in humans as far as different cultures. Yeah, so, and it's proven because they're hardworking in the community, in the gardens, and they have a social understanding where like people look out for one another throughout their whole entire lifespan. And that tight bonded community and in the environment has given them longevity, and people, as far as women, have lived or surpassed 100 years old. So yeah, you can look that up. Okinawans have one of the longest lifespan in Japan, and I've seen that, and before I knew that, before I learned that, I read it in one of my college studies that Okinawans have the longest lifespan, in Okinawa, in Japan. So it was no surprise at all, and that was after I changed my perspective by seeing that in real life. Okay, so I told you why I love Japan. It's safe, it's clean, it's fast, it's convenient. So let's get into this topic of today. Let's dive into our first place. Sensoji-Temple is located in Asakusa, Japan. It's a must-see temple. It's so beautiful. There's so many colors. Well, not a lot of colors. It's really just red and black, just everywhere, kind of. But it's very beautiful. It's one of the oldest, most significant temples in Japan. It's gone through a number of modifications and renovations. However, the first one originates to 1645 AD. It's overwhelmingly crowded, so be aware. Go with light things so you can kind of be loose and move around through the traffic, because people will be taking pictures everywhere and people will be in your pictures, and it's just a lot. So if you can take a tip from me, grab a backpack, a little fanny pack, that's what I have, you'll see, and just go like with your hands free, as I am always. I love my fanny packs. People always make fun of me. But yes, check out this temple. It's so beautiful. Your pictures will come out great and you won't be disappointed. people just everywhere. Like I mentioned before, there's families with children. You'll see women in their kimonos. If you've been wanting to see that, you'll find it here at the temple. It's so beautiful, all different colors. There's a lot of tourists, there's a lot of locals. Everyone's just there for the energy. People are praying, people are taking pictures. There's a lot of different sounds you'll see. Once you get there, you'll immediately notice the sounds of like shaking metals. I'll mention that and explain that a little bit later. But yeah, so you'll hear a lot of shaking of the metals, and then you'll hear cicada bugs. Okay, so I'm from Washington, where we don't have cicada bugs, at least not yet. They haven't, hopefully not ever, but I wasn't familiar with cicada bugs, and a lot of you maybe from Vegas might know, because I've seen another one there. That's when I figured out, like, oh, they are in the States, but they're so loud. In Japan, they're like really loud, and you'll hear them depending on what time you go, what season I should say, and they're so loud, like you'll literally think there's like electricity buzzing somewhere, but really it's the cicada bug. It's quite disgusting because they're just big old beetles, just, I don't know, but those are some sounds. So yeah, you'll hear the people, you hear the metals, and you'll hear the cicada bugs, and once in a while you'll hear the crows, which if you've ever been to Japan, I challenge you to listen to the crows. If you're from the States, they just crow a little differently. Like it's a more of a sorrow crow. I don't know. That's one thing another difference I noticed. So I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of shaking of the metal, and that as soon as you get there, you start to hear it, and it kind of sparks your interest. I know it did for me. So I went over, and they're called the omikuji stalls, and they're little fortunes that you pay a donation, which I paid 100 yen, which is $1 in US, and you kind of just pay to get your fortune, and it's like self-serve. You just walk up to the stall. It's a little hexagon metal box, and you shake it until the pin comes out, and then the pin has a number, and you associate it with the box, and then you go find your box with the pin number. So if mine was like 159 on the pin, after I shook the metal out of the hexagon box, I walk over to the stall and find it and read my fortune. So it's really cool, and it's very loud. It's something you'll hear throughout the whole time you're at the temple, when you're close enough to hear, obviously. And yeah, it's pretty cool, the omikuji stalls. Let's not forget the food. There's so many different types of foods you can try. One thing I discovered was the mochiko. They're like little dumplings, little rice dumplings, very chewy, different flavors. You can get it with like sauce. You can get like cold ones, warm ones. They're everywhere. So how did I get to the temple? Okay, so I was coming from Tachikawa, Japan, and I had to get to Asakusa station, and I took a number of different train lines. I think I took a total of 3. So depending on where you're coming from, you might have to take a number of different train lines, but it's not that bad. Most of them took me about 5-minute walks in between, and like I said before, I did research, so I knew what to look for and what like names to look for at each station, and the maps kind of gave me colors, so it's really easy. And when you're on the train, it states which stop is coming next. You can see words, so it's good to know what to look for as far as doing research. And if you have a phone, you can just pull it up on Google Maps and then take a picture, a screenshot, so that if you lose service or something happens, you still have that picture in hand and you can kind of navigate, because it has happened to me. So make sure you just look up the names that you need. It cost me 820 yen one way, so about $15 total. Another thing I recommend that makes things convenient, you don't have to stop and get tickets. It's just like a circuit card where you just kind of scan it. It's a prepaid card. It costs $5, but you can reload it and it's good. For the whole trip, you can keep it for your next upcoming trip. And yeah, you kind of just load it, put money on it, tap it down, and you just go right through the train station. It makes things so convenient because everyone is moving fast. So yeah, circuit card. And it's so fun just getting there, navigating. You have to have a lot of patience. I really appreciate when I was getting towards central Tokyo, I started to realize more tourists were starting to be seen, so there was more English speakers. I could have conversations, and kind of when you see someone who looks like you, it sparks interest, like, what are you doing here? And that happened more towards central Tokyo. So once I got to Asakusa station, it was about a 10-minute walk, and the temple was right there. It was beautiful. You're always seeing something different. Everyone's moving fast. You start to realize, wow, there are so many people in Japan and they're constantly moving so many people are about, going about their own ways. You see little girls traveling by themselves, little kids, which is, it's safe in Japan. So kids are like leaving home from school by themselves, no issues. I thought that was so beautiful. That's what I wish it was like here in the United States. But here, we can't do that. Another thing I advise people is don't think you're going to get on the train and be comfortable and relax. There are so many people who are traveling throughout their day. The trains get so compact. You're like shoulder to shoulder to people, and sometimes you have to stand up for a number of minutes, like 20 minutes on a train standing up shoulder to shoulder seems like forever. So don't think you're gonna get comfortable. It gets really busy, and be polite in their country. Challenge yourself to emerge into their social norms and what's normal and polite in their country. If elderly walks in, or a lady who's pregnant, it's polite and common courtesy to let them sit on the bench in the train. So offer your seat up. And remember, Jasmine Chanel told you don't get comfortable, and it's overwhelming, but it's so cool to see. All right, guys, that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in. That was Sensoji-Temple, located in Asakusa, Japan. I hope you had as much fun as I did when I went, creating my own memories. Enjoy the process to get there. It was so much fun for me, challenging myself, making sure I knew the routes. Do your research, know the routes, know the destinations, know what phrases to look for, know how much money you might need just to get there. It's very easy, and it's more fun if you are prepared. So prepare yourself. That way, if anything happens, take screenshots of the routes and be intuitive of everything that's going on around you, because just looking around, you can learn so much. Don't forget to look up. There's so many buildings to see. There's so many businesses that just are above eye level if you're short like me. Yes, don't forget to look up in Japan. There's so much to see from the ground all the way up. Take advantage, know your routes. Don't think you're gonna get comfortable on the train in Japan, and just have fun with it. I really enjoyed the final destination of the temple, seeing the colors, seeing the attention to detail, looking at the souvenirs, and just be patient with yourself. It's a process. You're in a completely foreign country where, like me, I didn't know the language. Ask questions and be polite to your surroundings. Be a well-known, intuitive traveler, so you're not doing anything that might be disrespectful to the temple, or just just don't be disrespectful. I'm just kidding. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. This is your girl Jasmine Chanel, giving you Sensoji-Temple, Asakusa, Japan. In episode 3, I think we're gonna go to Mexico. So a lot of cool things, a lot of tips, to-dos, and the difference in between staying in like a resort and then an Airbnb. I went to both Cabo and Cancun, so I kind of want to compare and contrast those, because one was like a resort and one was Airbnb, and I'll let you know which one I really enjoyed more. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time, episode 3, Mexico.